This is Meena Gill, a fourth-generation Valmiki woman from Kashmir. Despite living in Kashmir for generations, she and her family never had the right to vote in Jammu Kashmir's local body and assembly elections. Like Meena Gill, there are around 10,000 Valmikis, a scheduled caste community who have been living for generations in Kashmir without voting rights. Not just Valmikis, women who married non-Kashmiri men were also denied voting rights. Hindu and Sikh refugees from West Pakistan who had settled in Jammu post-partition never had voting rights for 75 years. But things changed on August 5, 2019 when Article 370 was abrogated. Those who were hitherto disenfranchised like the Valmikis, Kashmiri women and West Pakistan refugees became equal citizens with voting rights. For the first time ever, they cast their votes in the local body polls held in 2020. Currently, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are union territories administered by the central government through a lieutenant governor. But eventually it has to regain its statehood with elections held to the state assembly. And so a delimitation commission was formed to redraw the assembly constituencies of Jammu and Kashmir. The commission has allotted 43 seats for Jammu region and 47 for Kashmir, taking the total tally of assembly seats from 83 to 90. This was the first step towards restoring the electoral process in Jammu and Kashmir after the abrogation of Article 370. But what is the point of elections if a majority of the people remain disenfranchised? And so the government has decided to revise the electoral rules, allowing any ordinary resident of Kashmir to register as a voter. The operative term here being ordinary. Prior to the abrogation of Article 370, only permanent residents, also called as state subjects, were eligible to get registered as a voter for the assembly elections. A permanent resident of Jammu and Kashmir meant a person who has lived there for 10 years and has lawfully acquired immovable property in the state. Anyone from other parts of India could not become a voter in Kashmir even if that person stayed in Kashmir for decades, because Article 35A prevented other Indians from acquiring property. Here is an example to understand the gravity of the problem. An Indian moving from Trichy in Tamil Nadu to Ahmedabad in Gujarat can register as a voter in Gujarat after cancelling their vote in Trichy. However, he or she cannot do the same if they settle down in Kashmir. Even if that person lived in Kashmir for decades and became a voter, they could vote only in the Lok Sabha elections and not the state assembly elections. And then there is the case of the Valmikis. Thousands of Valmikis from Punjab were brought to Jammu and Kashmir in 1957 by the then National Conference government and were given permanent resident certificates. But they had to abide by the condition that their future generations could stay in Jammu and Kashmir if they continued to be scavengers and Safai Karmcharis. They were pushed to eternal slavery through Article 370 and 35A. They could not even get a domicile certificate, let alone voter IDs. All of this has changed now with the government announcing that any ordinary resident could register as a voter. Women like Meena Gill and thousands of Kashmir residents who were disempowered for decades can finally taste democracy. Around 25 lakh Kashmir residents are expected to benefit out of this move, making them vote for the first time. But this democratization of Kashmir is being opposed by dynastic politicians. For long, these political dynasts have treated Kashmir like their personal property, flirting with Pakistani terror sympathizers and creating a vote bank for themselves. Their fortress has now been razed down with the democratization of Kashmir. Unable to stomach this democratization, these parties are now unapologetically espousing xenophobia, calling their own residents who don't fall within their ambit as outsiders. But these parties must realize one thing: Kashmir is not a personal property of anyone, and Kashmiris are not special. They are as special as any Indian. With this, Kashmir is truly being integrated with India with the integration of the hearts of the people by allowing them to exercise their democratic right.